My son is so into Pokemon, and he just talks at me.
Whoa.
With Pokemon stuff, and I do everything I can not to say, I don't know what you're talking about.
So your great journey
Yes.
into video games continues.
Yes.
This time we sent you home with Uncharted 2, in part
Yes.
because you enjoyed The Last of Us so much.
Right.
Pretty different games, huh?
They are very different.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I think, so I eventually did finish The Last of Us really shortly after we spoke the last time. And it was amazing. It was such a cool experience, and the experience all the way to the end carried through.
That's awesome.
And it was really, really satisfying. And as I said, from like a cinematic, storytelling, and emotional level, it was really cool. So then to go into Uncharted 2, it was a really as you say, it was a really different experience.
For sure.
And I don't know if it would have been better if I played Uncharted 2 first and then The Last of Us, but I think after coming off of The Last of Us, Uncharted 2 wasn't as satisfying.
Sure.
I had a really great time doing it, and I played through it actually really quickly, and I had the same feeling of wanting to get back to it and spending really long hours and late nights and not sleeping enough playing it. So it was very fun, but it was interesting. I tried to really think about what the experience, why it was different, and what I was getting out of The Last of Us that I wasn't getting out of Uncharted. Uncharted, the mechanics of it and everything, it's all sort of superhero.
Yeah.
You know,
totally.
You can jump so far, and it's all these it's very unrealistic. It's all adventure and really fun and satisfying, and you know, you can just shoot till there's no more bullets and it doesn't matter because there's another gun coming.
Very recently I replayed Uncharted 2 and I checked my body count at the end of it, and it was 1,300 people. That is how many people I murdered over the course of Uncharted 2.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize you could do that.
Yep,
I need
a
to
lot of dudes.
Okay.
Nathan Drake is the worst murderer and is probably morally far worse than anyone you encounter in The Last of Us.
Totally.
If you encountered him in The Last of Us, you'd be like, oh, this is another psychopath.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly. You would be terrified, and you'd never get past him. So
he could just jump so far.
Exactly, he would out-jump you. And so I think that's what was so interesting about the difference, was that you had sort of this adventure, superhero type of mechanics with the experience, whereas The Last of Us, it was more realistic as far as like what physically, you know, quote unquote, physically you could do within the game felt more in line with what you would be able to do in real life.
Totally, and it's funny that you mentioned the order you played them in, because The Last of Us was, I think, interesting for a lot of people because it came after Naughty Dog doing 3 Uncharted games, and it's such a huge, like you referenced, it's just the biggest tonal departure imaginable. It's a lot less silly, a lot less campy, a lot less Indiana Jones, and a lot more like, this game is just relentlessly grim and doesn't let up. Whereas all Uncharted does is let up. It's pure levity, comedy, like...
Yeah, and it's kind of, you know, it felt like there was definitely, I don't know, the little bit kind of cliche adventure stuff.
Yeah.
The love triangle is a little silly. You know.
It was, but I still liked it for some reason.
You know what? Totally fair to like it, and it was really, you know, it was really fun. And I think I put it also into perspective. So I finished Uncharted 2, and then I didn't have a game to play. I had a few laying around. That, but nothing from the list of recommendations. Right. You know,
the YouTube comments.
All the YouTube comments and the stuff that you've been recommending, and so what but I had Thief. I had an Xbox One, and I thought, I'll try Thief. Well, two things. First, I tried Titanfall.
Okay.
Everybody's talking about how great Titanfall is.
Sure.
I can't do those. The shooter games, I can't do.
It's really fast.
It's so fast, and it's just I realize that I don't think I can. I'm just giving up on them because I'm realizing that, as I said before, that what got me into video games initially was this idea that they were telling me stories, And it's just, without the story, I really find myself bored quickly.
Totally. It's funny because Titanfall, they had kind of positioned it as like, this game is going to it's going to like seamlessly weave together multiplayer and story.
Right.
And I don't think it actually did. I think there's bits and pieces of it, but it really doesn't. And another thing is that you're playing that game a couple months after it came out.
I know, and so everybody's better than I am.
They all kick ass.
Yeah.
And that's I couldn't play Titanfall today probably without getting my ass whooped.
It's really frustrating. I remember the first time I tried Battlefield, I just thought, wow, I mean, this is the most unfun experience I've ever had because I'm just dying all the time.
So you went off Uncharted 2 into Thief, the 2014 Thief game. How did that treat you?
I've never been so bored in my life.
Okay.
And just so disenchanted. I mean, it was really where the make-believe of Uncharted was really fun. The make-believe of The Last of Us, totally emotionally amazing. And then to get to Thief was just such a letdown because it was...
So the writing, is that what it was?
Well,
or the gameplay?
It was barely writing. The gameplay, I mean, I'm just taking watches and like blowing out candles. It was... I felt really silly. If I'm gonna hide, in secret playing games, that's not worth it.
Not worth the sacrifice.
That's not worth it.
It's funny because I think part of why Uncharted and The Last of Us were so significant as like watershed moments in games for a lot of people is because your experience with Thief is more or less representative of what most video games are like in terms of like doing things for the sake of doing them, a script that is just phoned in and barely there. Like that was kind of par for the course until like the last 5 or 6 years. And we probably screwed up by starting you with the exception to the rules because now it's like all downhill from here, basically.
Well, I would say though that I'm guessing that you didn't screw up because I'm guessing that I wouldn't have come as far as I have if I started with Thief. If I started with those games, because I really do. I do love storytelling so much. As I've said, I identify as a storyteller. I really care about it. It's all I really care about in art is that the ability to tell a story. And so that is without that, I really don't think I would have ever gotten into video games.
Gotcha.
So I would have probably quit a lot earlier.
Good, and I mean, I think there really genuinely are other exceptions, other games that have fantastic scripts. I'm sure you'll see some in the comments. I've got a few suggestions of my own, but also I would like to believe that games like The Last of Us are like symptomatic of the trajectory of the industry, and that like the people who are making games today and the people who are growing up and becoming game developers and producers today are looking at those games and just being like, wow, this is what I want to make. Like this is what games can do. So you picked, I'd like to think, a good era, a good decade to begin playing video games.
Good, well I'm excited. And that was my hope, was that the success of those games makes it so people keep wanting to make those types of games.
You know what, just next time ask us before you play something and we'll prevent you from ever having to play something like Thief ever again.
Yeah.
We'll be your barrier.
Okay.
We'll send you home with like a BioShock Infinite or something.
Perfect. What I would like so I've gotten comments about, that I should try BioShock. So I'm excited. I'd love to have that be my next game.
Cool. We'll get you a copy of BioShock.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
Awesome.